We're two pups. I like scary movies.
And I don't. Luckily, he's an expert.
Each week, we'll dissect a new horror movie scene by scene and discuss the major themes and elements so that Lauren is not so scared when it comes to watching the real deal.
You're listening to Pupcorn in a Movie, Episode 2.
Why do you want to do this anyway?
Because I love you and I think you're cool.
So last week, if you listened to us, if you're one of the 24 people who listened to us.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed with us.
We talked about the 1977 horror movie Suspiria. At the end of the episode, I convinced Lauren to take a chance and watch the movie. And we ended up watching it, and we set up some microphones and recorded a little bit of a commentary so that you can hear her reaction to the movie.
There's going to be a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
This girl's eyebrows are pretty horizontal, too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a boop. We left it in.
Blueberries. Would a plane even be able to land in this weather?
I don't think so.
Probably not. I love the red rain.
Mm-hmm.
And green rain. Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Also, now he speaks English.
Yeah, really. What a dick. Europeans, love archways that aren't doors. They're like, somebody's going to be falling through this in a sec. This is really a fabulous apartment, though. Hey!
Just to close the window,
It's just the wind.
Yeah, the wind can't turn a doorknob, though.
But I think there was a flash of a hand in there. Babe, I'm scared.
Well, you know what happens.
I know what happens. This is a real test, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I know what happens, and am I still scared? And the answer is yes. This apartment is fabulous, though.
Right?
Oh my god, I'm so scared. Scared. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the music is what's setting the tone. Because if there's no music, the scene's not as creepy.
They're so fake looking, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, The arm is so hairy.
Yeah.
It's so grotesque. It takes a lot of effort to stab someone, though, honestly. Oh my god, this is so crazy. Also, there would be so much more blood. He really tied that noose very perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god. What the hell? Cool haircut. Little page boy. Bruno, I can't read. Please read it for me. She's smiling so hard.
I know.
Hello. Hi. That is not what I expected Olga to look like. Why is everyone so weird here? Has Dario Argento ever met a woman? She's very vampy looking. I bet you she's a witch too.
Roll you later.
I just can't wait till the maggots part. I just remembered. If that's what you're wondering, yes, I'm a witch doctor. Ew, 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 ew! Oh my god! No, girl. This bitch can't get a break. Ah! Oh my god! That's too many maggots, though. So sick.
If you want to go get a hotel, that's fine by me. But also, you should probably stay here.
But don't do it. You're like, oh, by the way, we set you up right next to the fucking dead witch.
I don't know what the word secret or iris mean either.
I mean, generally, I don't know what those words mean. They don't do
That's
what?
not a thing that girls do together.
Swim alone in a pool?
At night and gossip. Not really. It's almost like she's in a crystal ball that some witches are looking at, like in Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm. Or Snow White.
I like how it went from the blue where she thought she was safe to the green. Girl, what are you doing? Girl, what the hell?
I know, it's like taking...
Have you ever made a stack of anything before?
He's like, just a moment, I'll be there. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, miss. Oh, try to get. Okay. Oh, okay.
Girl, have you ever stacked anything? Girl, do it. Get out. Get out of there, bitch.
Freedom. Fries.
Oh, what? Why is that there? I forgot.
Pavlos, you need to clean up your barbed wire room.
God, this is really... It's making me ill. So sick. I didn't realize he was so young and hot.
Udo Kier. No, my favorite subject is the model airplanes. No, gotta get the blood out. I'm lost, I just need some directions.
Honestly, the fakest looking bat I've ever seen.
Right?
It's like a little puffball.
Yeah, I'll bite you. Yeah, I'm gonna get you over here.
He's like...
It's like gumming her.
It's like not even... His mouth is not even anywhere near her.
I know.
Oh my fucking god.
It was just a helpless bat. He was just
Let it
lost.
outside. Smoking his spliff.
I was literally just about to say that.
I bet we should have said that at the same time, baby. Look, if they're gonna murder her, why don't they just do it, for fuck's sake?
Right?
The visuals are very compelling, but, like, the movie itself is so boring. None of these women are, like, in any way three-dimensional characters.
Well, this is
That's
also...
what's so boring about it. Like, none of them have any thoughts except for fear. This is so boring. But it's just like, come on, guys. For someone that old and that burnt up, she sure has retained her facial features.
Mm-hmm. And those long, luxurious nails.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, what did you think of Suspiria?
Visually, aesthetically, super interesting. Plot-wise, pretty #basic. Not that interesting. Pretty much you can guess what's going to happen from the beginning. But even though I knew everything about it, well, two things happened. One, I actually was really scared during certain points. It was pretty tense. So what you maybe can't tell from listening to the reactions, one, it was actually scary. It was pretty tense. And I was scared despite knowing what was going to happen. But also, it was pretty boring to the point that I fell asleep in the middle of it. And we took a 20-minute nap. And I would say the second half of the movie was more boring, plot-wise, even though a lot of the things that it set up really came to a head in the second half.
Right, like I think the payoff is sort of interesting if you didn't have like the sort of meandering third act where like you're kind of waiting for something to happen, and there's like the 10-minute scene where she's talking to the psychiatrist.
It's so unnecessary.
And it's just kind of an injection of exposition where there was none. I almost think that it would have been more interesting if she had like overheard something or she had witnessed some of the thing in the school so that the audience sort of comes to that conclusion on their own, that there are witches and that there's like something going on, rather than like having these two men explain this for about, 7 to 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. That scene was like 15 minutes too long.
Personally, I don't find the movie boring or slow. Like, I like all that, but you could trim 10 to 15 minutes off the movie. It's only 100 minutes long, and you could easily make it 90 and still get the same effect.
I think it would have been much scarier of a movie, actually, if there was a lot less exposition and they just showed you scary images and kind of let you piece together this dreamscape or nightmarescape on your own.
Right, because the first 15 minutes of the movie really set it up. Watching your reaction, that was the scariest portion of the movie.
Absolutely.
Was the about the first 15 minutes where Pat's character gets stabbed and hung, and then the lady her friend gets stabbed in the face with the falling glass.
Yeah.
Because like all of that sort of sets up this very, very creepy world, and then they sort of spend like an hour of the next hour sort of just like bumbling around to get to the witch.
There's still a lot of unanswered questions, though, too. Despite all of the exposition, there are a lot of unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that Augustus Gloop guy?
Yeah.
The kid. Why is he there? Why is there a blind piano player? What function does he serve in the story? Why is there a psychiatrist? Or none of those people, they all arrive in the 11th hour just to do a little exposition, which isn't worthwhile to me.
The exposition doesn't make the movie any better or scarier. But with all that said, I do like the movie a lot. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate that movie, and would you recommend it to someone else who doesn't like scary movies?
Okay, I'll do like a holistic rating here.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give this a 7, meaning I did find it scary, but not too scary that I couldn't deal with it, and your explanation helped a lot. The parts that were most scary wouldn't have been unscary with an explanation because they're more about the visual effects. I would recommend this to someone who is a big baby like me. It's not that bad.
So each week we want to pair a food or a dish that really works well with the movie, maybe complements the setting or the time period or colors in the movie. When we watched it, when we watched Suspiria, we made a very special cheese board.
Yeah, we used just a pretty typical brie, but it was nice and oozy. We used a clove spice cherry preserve. Oh, and so the theme of this cheese board, I should say, is kind of to bring us into the Germanic setting where this movie takes place, in the dark woods. So we had our dark German pumpernickel bread. We had our spice cherry preserves. We had our nice oozy brie, a nice spicy mustard as well, and some cured meats. Perfect to munch on while you're watching a movie.
And it was a combination of Italian with the cured meats and like sort of the mustard that you get like sort of deli with like the dark German bread. And where's brie? Where do they make brie?
In France.
In France. Well, some of the people on set spoke different languages, so and then they were dubbed over.
That's right.
So that represents the French side. But and it was like on this very beautiful black cutting board. So it's very, very dark and very much Suspiria. And we will post the ingredients that we used on SoundCloud and wherever you're listening. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Pupcorn and a Movie, and there'll be pictures of the cheese plate. So you can see how we arranged it, and maybe you can do better. Send us your Suspiria-inspired cheese boards.
There's a lot of S's. You know, I read about S names.
They're all the names of snakes. Did you like when she stuck out her tongue? It was only like a quarter way out, but she went, me.
It really was exactly the sound that you made when we were talking about it the first time.
All right, so are you ready to talk about our new movie?
Super ready.
The movie that we're going to talk about this week is a little bit more recent. It's from 2009. However, the movie was shot on 16 millimeter film to make it look like it was in the 80s.
Tricky.
Yeah, so it's a very cool style. The name of the movie is The House of the Devil.
I've never heard of this, actually.
Okay. I like this movie for a lot of different reasons, mainly because of the aesthetic and its promotional material. It was released on VHS in 2009 when the movie came out. And obviously that's a defunct, form of media.
Does anyone even have a VHS player?
A VCR? No, they don't.
Yeah, I forgot what it was called. Because I haven't seen one in 20 years.
It's the only media device that's not, the player is not named after the format. Like DVD player, you don't use like a DVR for a DVD player. And a CD player, you don't use like a CVR.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's the only one. Just the look of the movie, they do a lot of technical things that were only available in the 80s. A lot of shots they zoom in rather than dolly.
Okay.
Which gives it this very like sort of warped effect.
Yeah.
The cast is very interesting because Greta Gerwig is in it.
Oh, really?
For very little, maybe like 10 minutes. Lena Dunham is also in it as you just hear her voice.
That's bizarro.
Have you ever seen Rock and Roll High School with the Ramones?
No. Okay, so
if you've seen that movie, the Principal Togar, who's like the antagonist in the movie, Mary Warrenoff is the actress's name. She's in this movie. Dee Wallace, have you ever seen The Frighteners?
No. If it's a scary movie, I've never seen it.
The Frighteners is Peter Jackson, guy who did Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
And Michael J. Fox. I was going to say Michael Jackson. And Michael J. Fox, and he's a paranormal investigator, but he works with the ghosts, and he's like a con man. So his ghost friends go in, they haunt the house, and then he busts them, and then he gets paid.
Okay, we should actually watch that
movie. It's awesome. It's really funny, and it's like before Peter Jackson became like Lord of the Ringsy. And this other actor, Tom Noonan, is on this great episode of Louis on FX where he plays a coroner who's called in to give Louis's class an autopsy of Jesus after he's like beaten up, and like how he sustained all his wounds and how he died, because Louis talks up in class, and to punish him, they bring in this guy to describe the bloody events of everything that happened. And this guy, Tom Noonan, plays the coroner on Louis. He's great, and he's excellent in this movie. There was a little bit of controversy with this movie in terms of behind the scenes. There's 2 cuts of the movie. One cut, obviously the director's initial vision. The other one cut out a lot of things that, like in Suspiria, they could have cut out. But when you watch the director's version, you see how much they add to this sort of boredom to the movie, so that when the action happens, it really ramps up.
Okay.
I'll go into more detail about it later because I don't want to spoil that part of it.
I do want to say, just from hearing the title, I am very scared.
Okay. And the last thing I want to say about it, has this very subdued yellowish tint to it.
Is it also giallo?
No, it's not giallo. But the cinematography is very muted. The colors are like brown and like green and like this ochre and kind of stuff like that. Really plays on the film stock, the 16 millimeter film stock. And it really does give you a feeling of the 80s. Although there are a few things that I'll go over that make it, you're like, it's not exactly like an 80s film. it's really close to being almost exactly what something you would see in the 80s, but there's like a few things that you're like, oh, if they had just changed that, it would have been perfect. Because my idea of the movie is that you're digging through a box of old VHSs and you find it, and like the VHS is kind of warped and like it doesn't play right. So like there's things missing from it that make it perfect. But despite that, I do think it's a very good movie. But I do think for you, in terms of you, it's much scarier than Suspiria.
Do you think if you found this movie in a box full of movies for real from the 80s and you watched it without knowing anything about it, would you know that it is a fraud, or would you think that it's from the 80s?
That's a good question. If Greta Gerwig and the other actors, if it was all amateur actors, then I would say probably I could be convinced.
Okay.
But I think that's one of the problems, is that she's in it, that really takes you out of the aspect of the movie being from the 80s.
Okay.
There's also some weird music choices, and I'll get into it. It's sort of what I don't like about like Stranger Things or It, or like this resurgence of the 80s in general.
Yeah.
But as we talk about the movie, we'll go over all of that. So the movie takes place in 1983, and this is sort of at the height of satanic panic, where everybody was worried about satanic cults and the devil and devil worshippers and all that stuff. So the movie starts out with a disclaimer, and it says, during the 1980s, over 70% of American adults believed in the existence of abusive satanic cults. Another 30% rationalized the lack of evidence due to government cover-ups. The following is based on true, unexplained events.
So they're saying 100% of people believed that this is true.
Yes. So I like that the movie really commits to the fact that this is real.
Yeah.
And I like when movies like do that. It doesn't work in found footage movies like Blair Witch Project, because you know that it's not real. It's not a documentary. But like when this movie goes all in, you're like, okay, it's being very silly. Like you're in on the joke. Instead of the movie trying to be like, oh, we're going to trick you into thinking this is real. This movie is like, you obviously know it's not real, but let's pretend for a second that it is.
Okay.
Let's have some fun. I like that aspect of the movie.
Let's have a little fun, guys.
So the movie opens up in kind of this weird shot where this girl is standing in a living room looking out a window, and the camera is like, there's a kitchen between her and then there's like a living room, and the sort of the doorways are like off center, and the camera's like really far away, and it's like zooming in, and it's like zooming in on like half of her. It's like this very voyeuristic shot.
Okay.
And sort of voyeurism plays a little bit into the movie, like stalking and kind of that thing. So we meet our main character, Samantha, and she is in this house because she's looking for a place to rent. She has a conversation with the real estate agent, who's played by Dee Wallace, who's in the Frighteners. And they kind of go over the price, and it's like a 1-bedroom, and she says it's going to be $300 per month. And Samantha's kind of like, okay, because she can't afford it. She's a college student, and she doesn't have that much money.
Those are real 1980s prices.
Yeah, exactly. When I heard 300, I was like, hot damn.
Get me in that devil house.
Right? Well, this is not the house of the devil.
Oh,
this is just where she wants to live.
Okay.
And the house is this beautiful yellow, kind of canary yellow duplex. And it's very, very beautiful. And they shot this in Connecticut, so the architecture is very New Englandy. A lot of like lattices and a lot of multi-story homes. Mm-hmm. Samantha's very concerned about the rent, because to this college student who doesn't have a job, $300 is a lot, and she needs not only that but the deposit to secure the apartment. So she kind of chases the real estate agent outside, and she's like, look, I really want this place, but I just can't afford it. So the real estate agent's like, you remind me of my daughter. It's really hard to get a place. Like, how can any kid come up with all this money at once? So she's like, you know what? I'm going to waive the deposit. Just get me the first month ahead of time, and it's yours. If you can get it to me by Monday, then it's all yours. Samantha's like, great, I'll take care of it. You'll get the money by Monday, and it'll be all squared away. And she's walking away from the house, and it zooms out again. Everything is sort of zooming. There are a few dolly shots in the movie, but most of it is zooming in and out. It zooms out, and the house is next to a church, which is very interesting. Even though we don't see the house ever again in the movie, you're like, oh, this could have been a safe space for her because it's next to a church. So because movie's The House of the Devil. So it's kind of an interesting like wink to how close she could have been to none of the events of the movie happening.
So she actually doesn't end up living in this house, does she?
No, she does not. And does this great thing where it's zooming out, and there's a freeze frame. And then the title of the movie shows up on the left-hand side of the screen. It's this big yellow writing. It says The House of the Devil, and it even has like copyright underneath it, like an old movie from the 80s would.
Yeah.
And it's like her freeze framed on the right-hand side. It starts playing this song that it was very hard to find out what the title of it was. It sounds like an instrumental version of Moving in Stereo by the Cars.
Okay.
I couldn't find exactly what it was because there's not a lot of information about this movie online. Even interviews with the director were really hard to find. I only found one.
Maybe it's not online, but it's on VHS.
That's true. I have to send away for it.
Yeah.
I have to send in 10 coupons, 10 UPC codes. So I'm going to play the background music for the credits while we talk so you can get kind of a flavor of the movie itself.
Okay. So this sounds like it's gonna not be that scary.
Yes. So we go hard in on the 80s aspect of the movie. And like we talked about before, it does a good job of not sticking it down your throat. But like this song really kind of sets you up in a very Fast Times at Ridgemont High kind of way. And it does sound like an instrumental version, but just the route that it takes later is different. So I don't know if those rumors are true that it is an instrumental version of that song. Anyway, I think it's great because they kind of play this for a little bit over the title of the movie, and then she keeps walking, and then it'll just like freeze when she's walking, and then like the actors' names will come up, and then she'll keep walking and it'll freeze again, and it's very awkward because like she freezes and she's like blurry in like a position that's like unflattering.
That's like seems like a very 80s thing to do as well.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
you know where I think they do that? Muppets Take Manhattan.
Do they?
Something like that.
Okay. Like at the end of the movie? Because I think in the beginning of the movie it's the play. I think they do it at that at the end of the movie because it's like Kermit and then it says like Jim Henson, right? Like they freeze frame on Kermit. So you might be right.
You have to watch it again and find out.
Yeah. And this is like the first part where I noticed that the main character is dressed in like 80s jeans, but like has like this really big parka and these really big like kind of like oversized gloves. And the music is coming through these really tiny headphones that she has attached to a Walkman. They have like all the 80s elements, but you're not like, oh my God, they have like a Back to the Future poster in the background. And some kid's like, hey, I really love Michael Jackson. Like it's not, they don't really shove it down your throat, which I appreciate.
Hey, I really love Michael Jackson.
It was Dario Argento.
Yeah.
So she walks back to her dorm. They don't say where she's going to school, but they say university, which is kind of interesting. But she goes to her dorm and she finds a sock on her doorknob. And she
the old sock on the doorknob.
And that means that it's cleaning day and to get your socks off the floor. It also means that her roommate is having sex. And you kind of hear it through the doorway, and she's like, "Heather, come on!" And then like her roommate doesn't respond, so she like kind of skulks back down the hallway, and she goes back outside. And the way that we're following her is like the camera is stationary, but we're zooming in on her again, very like voyeuristic, like somebody's like looking at her through binoculars or something like that. The audience, the camera's like, we're choosing her. Mm-hmm. It's letting the audience know that we're choosing her to follow her. She passes this big community board outside, and there's a piece of paper that says babysitter needed, and the S on babysitter is a $sign, and then it has the little tear tabs at the bottom with like a phone number. But as the only thing on the page, it's just like a big blank white page that says in handwriting, babysitter needed. Around the notice are all these flyers for an upcoming eclipse viewing party, a lunar eclipse.
What do you know?
There's also a really great lost cat advertisement, and it's like this really nerdy guy like smiling really big, and he's holding like the cat almost like in a portrait photo, like in a portrait studio. You only see it like very briefly, but if you pause it, it's like a great little item on there. The eclipse viewing flyers, there's a bunch of different ones. Come and hang out with the cool kids, and then there's like a scientific one, and there's a bunch of other these things. So the eclipse is going to matter in this movie, but in this moment you don't know what it means. Like you have to freeze frame it on there to really see all the individual different notices. But she kind of passes it, and then she immediately walks back and takes the babysitter tag.
That's pretty weird. Like, normally people call you if you want to be their babysitter. You don't call them.
I guess that's true. But the motive for posting these will become clear, and you'll see why they posted something rather than calling somebody.
Okay.
So she goes to a payphone.
I'm just saying that's suspicious.
Oh, right. No. Absolutely. But I guess like for a college campus community job posting board
Sure.
in 1983 might not be that weird.
I'll
but
allow it.
I agree. I totally agree with you. So she goes to a payphone and she calls the number. She leaves a message on an answering machine. There's nobody home. And she walks away, and she walks like really, really far away. And then the phone starts to ring. So she's like, that's not the number that I gave you, because she gives her, like, why would she give the payphone number? She's not going to hang out there all day waiting for the call.
Right.
The phone rings for a little while and she starts to walk back. This guy answers and he's like, please excuse the urgency, but I need somebody tonight. And she's like, okay, that's fine. He's like, I'll pick you up in front of the student affairs office. He's like, I'm going to be there in a few minutes. Just meet me there and then I'll explain everything. So she's like, okay.
Super creepy.
Yeah. So she goes back to her dorm room, and it's like super, super dirty and disorganized, like her roommate's side, like hoarder style. Like as soon as she walks in, there's like shit everywhere. And her side is like very neat. She has like this brown quilt comforter. They're setting up. She's like very plain. She looks almost exactly like the main character from Suspiria. She has like sort of the same haircut, and watching it, I'm like, oh my God, this is a great bridge between the two movies.
That's funny.
She also looks a little bit, her face is kind of like the love interest from Wet Hot American Summer, because she looks like the actress from Suspiria. Makes me believe that she's from the 80s.
Okay, got it.
And that's what I don't like about her character. But the main character, Samantha, is excellent. Like it seems like a normal person. She's not acting, she's simply being something. And I think that's like the best type of acting, where you're like, okay, that person actually seems like they're from the, like if you just saw a short clip of it and you didn't know what it was from, you might think, oh, what is this old movie? Mm-hmm. So that's an aspect of it that I really like. So she goes into her dorm room. She sees like Heather's boyfriend like asleep on the bed, and he looks at her and he's like, what's up? Just had sex. And it's like very like awkward. It's very 1880s.
Did he say that?
No, but he just has his face like, yeah, it's very weird. She grabs a paper that she's written before leaving her dorm room, and she drops it off in like a plastic slot outside like her professor's door. And then she goes to the student affairs office and she sits down and she's waiting for this guy to pick her up. And she doesn't know his name, and she doesn't know where he lives, and she doesn't know the details of the babysitting job, but she needs the money for the apartment. And I believe they say it's Wednesday. By Monday, she needs to have $300.
So part of me is like, that is so stupid. Who would do that? And then part of me is remembering when I was 19 and did a ton of way stupider things constantly all the time. So
for money or just in general?
Here's an example. One time I went to Mardi Gras, did not tell my parents. I just stopped going to college for a few days, flew down to New Orleans with a friend of mine, and went to Mardi Gras.
Wow.
And I lost my phone charger while I was there, and my parents were calling me. Couldn't get a hold of me. Probably thought I was dead, honestly. And then I called them back and I was like, oh, hey guys, what's up?
They hear like in the background like like, is that beads in the background? So then you can relate a little bit.
My point is, if at first blush this sounds stupid, just like remember how stupid you were when you were 19.
Right.
Pretty stupid.
I think like the desperate nature of having to take any job that you can, coupled with the lack of details, is like where this sort of stupidity comes in.
You know what it also reminds me of too? Just dating in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know who the heck is going to show up at the date.
Right.
Or what they're going to put in your drink or whatever. And it's kind of a leap of faith every time you go out on a date, like the date that we went on. First date that we went on. I didn't know.
So she's waiting for the guy outside the student affairs office, and she puts on her headphones, and they do this thing where the camera's kind of far away from the stoop, and she's just sitting there, and she's like waiting so long that it fades, and then she's like laying down and, just trying to show like this like long passage of time that obviously that this guy is not coming. And then there's like this really interesting part where she gets up, she's frustrated that he didn't show up, and she's gonna leave, and she drops her Walkman. I don't think it was intended, but she has like a very like realistic reaction. She's like, oh, shoot. And it's just like a very like, oh, that's kind of neat. That's like, they kept that in. It's sort of the way we are today with phones. When you drop your phone, you're like, damn it, Mm-hmm. And I feel like that would have been the same way with like a Walkman, that it was a treasured piece of technology, especially because we're very obsessed with music, that like to have your music taken away from you is like a big deal.
Okay.
We then meet her friend Megan, who is played by Greta Gerwig, and they're having pizza. Pizza. And they're discussing the apartment, and they're kind of like, oh, this is going to be so great that you're moving out because your roommate in your dorm sucks. And Samantha's like, I only have $84 in my account. How am I going to get $300? Because the babysitting job, you don't know how much it pays, but it's certainly not going to pay $300.
Right.
Megan suggests ripping down all of the advertisements for the babysitting job so that nobody else will call and that her friend Samantha will get the job.
Yeah.
And Samantha's like, that's crazy. Why would we do that? Like, he didn't show up. Obviously something happened. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll find some other way to get the money. They don't say anything about her parents, but Megan, Greta Gerwig's character, is like, well, if you need anything, I can just ask my dad.
Okay.
So, like, she's supposed to be, like, this rich girl.
Right.
And Samantha's the poor girl. They kind of end on this, like, well, we'll figure something out. Let's just go back home. She goes back to her dorm room. Her friend is snoring very similar to the head mistress or the directress from Suspiria. It's kind of like a...
The roommate, you mean?
Yeah, her roommate. Yeah, Heather. The snoring is sort of becoming... like grating, and like in the soundtrack is becoming loud, and Samantha's like, I can't stand it anymore. So she goes to the bathroom, she turns on all the faucets, she has a good cry.
And I only cried for 20 minutes.
In the bathroom stall. I'm assuming that's in the dorm room, but it's just like a very, it's set up so that she can go to a stall to cry with the water on.
All right.
Which is like a very sort of 80s teen comedy kind of trope. You know, like the cool kids hanging out in the bathroom. It's like kind of your place of solitude,
right,
sort of thing. She finally stops crying, and she does this thing where she looks in the mirror and she's like, get a grip. It's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So she's like kind of psyching herself up. She goes back to her dorm room, and her roommate Heather wakes up, and she's very obnoxious because she's like clearing her throat. She's like clearing her throat and just like being gross, like hoarder type. And she's like, her roommate says, someone called for you. And Samantha's like, who? And she's like, I don't know, some guy. I left the number on your desk. She looks at the number, and it's the same number of the babysitting job.
Got it.
So the guy called her at the number that he left. I have some audio from it so that you can hear the guy's voice, because it's this guy, Tom Noonan, who is on Louie. And he just has a very particular way of speaking. It's very soft-spoken, and it's just, when you hear at the end of the movie what happens, like how creepy that soft-spoken nature is.
Okay.
So I'll play you the clip now.
Hello, this is Samantha Hughes again. I got a message that you called.
Samantha?
Yes?
Oh, thank goodness you called. Quite frankly, I didn't think you would. I'm so sorry about this morning. Things were very hectic for me, and I got caught up in lots of last-minute details. It was a bit of a catastrophe.
It's all right, don't worry about it.
I spoke with another girl this morning who I thought was going to work out, but she turned out to be totally unreliable. And while I can certainly understand you being upset with me, I must be honest, I'm in dire need of someone.
You mean tonight?
Yes. It's very important. I will pay you double what I would have normally. That's $100. It's very simple. It wouldn't take even much of your time. We would be home soon after midnight.
What time is it when he actually called?
This is like maybe like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's still daylight out.
Oh, I thought because her roommate was asleep.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't explain that right. But yeah, so like this is all happening in one day. She sees the realtor like really early in the morning, and then she has to wait for the guy to show up, and then she has like pizza lunch with her friend. Then she gets back to the dorm room. She accepts the job, even though it's for $100, and the audience clearly knows that that's not gonna take her anywhere near where she has to be to get her rent. But she needs some kind of money coming in so that at least she can be partway there. So her friend Megan gives her a ride. There's a radio ad for the upcoming eclipse as they're driving. They kind of remark about like how sick and tired they are of where you're going to be when you watch the eclipse. It's sort of like what happened earlier or late last year when we had the eclipse, and everybody was freaking out like they had never heard or seen an eclipse before.
I think that was right before I met you, right?
Yeah, that was when we had started talking, because it was like a week after we started talking.
That's nice.
So we are eternally linked by the eclipse.
That's sweet.
The total eclipse of my fart.
The heart.
No. Just like Bart. The conversation they have in the car is filmed, again, from a very voyeuristic point of view. The camera is set in the back seat on the opposite side of whoever's talking. So like Megan is driving the car and the camera's like sitting in the back seat on the right. So you see like half her face and like the car's seat. So it's like almost like somebody's like in the back of the car, like watching them, which I think is very cool. Like we're setting up this, like these people are being watched / chosen, sort of like, cults choose select people, things like that.
I really do wonder how cults choose somebody. Or is it just opportunistic?
Well, maybe after I describe this movie, maybe you'll have a better opinion of it.
You're like, just sit down and find out, Lauren. Just wait and see. Hang on.
Megan comments, this is kind of weird. I had to like look this place up on a map because she didn't even know where it was. And then she reveals that she has something to tell Samantha, but she can't be mad about it. And Samantha's like, just tell me already. And Megan reaches into the back seat and pulls out all the babysitting ads that she had torn down. So she went and did it anyway. She's been selected because she was the only one, other than this unreliable person from earlier in the morning that the guy referenced. Her friend basically sets her up to be the one to go do the babysitting job.
Got it.
Megan wants to stay with her in the house to like keep her company. And Samantha's like, we'll see. That's like kind of weird for like the homeowner to have like two people in the house that they don't know, and she's not going to get paid.
Yeah.
Her friend's not going to get paid. As they're driving out there, they drive past a cemetery.
Spooky.
And that's like very close to the home because it shows the cemetery, and then like they're there. They're like at this home, and it's this like gorgeous 2-story New England home, and it's got these green stairs to like this huge porch, huge entrance doors, ochre accents. Everything's like beveled and just like very, very beautiful.
Like in Hereditary.
Yes, except that one's more modern.
No, I mean just like a beautiful house.
Oh, right, exactly. Yes. So again, like we'll get into this in a little bit, like the haunted house, sort of like in Suspiria, where the academy itself is also a character.
Right.
They notice a Volvo in the driveway. Megan says, hey, it's the safest car on the road. And that's like another thing that I don't like about the movie. It's like they're commenting, like in the 80s, I don't think they would comment on that the way that we do now.
That's funny because I had a Volvo for my first car, and that's why my dad got it, because he kept saying safest car on the road, and it drives like a tank.
Whatever the circumstances, it's nice to know your wife is driving a safe car.
I just think in the context of...
I'm sure in the 80s it would have been different, but...
So that's like one thing that takes me out of the movie. It's like, you didn't have to say that. That's like as stupid as if they had Thriller playing on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's like a small gripe against the movie. So they meet the owner of the house and the guy who's offering the babysitter job, Mr. Ullman. Which
sort of like Omen?
Yeah, it's like very close to Omen. He's very, very tall, like Lurch tall. But very, very skinny, white beard, bald, but with like wispy little white threads kind of on his head.
That's my favorite kind of men's haircut.
And he walks with a cane.
Okay.
And so he's lanky. He is very non-threatening looking. They go in through the house, and it's like absolutely beautiful in there. And it's decorated like perfectly for a mid-80s New England style home. Lots of wood, lots of armchairs.
Got it.
it's when you see it, you're gonna be like, this house is great. It's like very, very believable that this is what the house would look like inside.
Okay.
And they have like these great doorways where the doors open and they go like into the recesses of the walls.
Oh, a pocket door. I love
it. Yeah, exactly. So it's very cool. That Mr. Ullman's like, he's like, what a relief to get this moment behind us. Like the awkwardness of having to like find a babysitter for the night. And Samantha's like, okay.
Still haven't heard anything about the babies.
They start to talk about the eclipse, the upcoming eclipse. And Mr. Ullman's like, we live in the most perfect place in the world to see the eclipse. Megan's like, oh, are you a teacher? And he's like, not exactly. And she's like, are you an astronomer? And he's like, not exactly.
Okay.
So he's giving off very creepy vibes already.
I just want to say, as a former babysitter, that's like the first thing that you would ask is like, how old are the kids?
Right.
What are they like?
So we haven't even gotten to who they're going to be babysitting yet.
Right. Okay.
Because Megan is there, the Mr. Ullman is a little... He's like, come with me into the other room to Samantha. He's like, I want to talk to you in this other room. He's like, I'm only paying for one person. And Samantha's like, no, she was just my ride. She's not going to stay. And he's like, whew, okay, good. And he gives like this very awkward sigh of relief.
Weirdo.
Yeah, my wife is on edge from this whole situation. And Samantha's like, okay. And then there's this weird cut to Megan eating candy from a dish in the living room, and she's like chewing on it, and she like spits it out and puts it in her bag, and then she finds some other in this dish, and then she starts eating them. Sort of, she's desecrating the house.
Okay.
In a way, because it's like blood red candy.
Okay.
Mr. Ullman then describes who she's going to be babysitting, and he's like, we don't have a child. And he's like, no, we have a child, but he's grown up. You're not here to babysit a child. It's my wife's mother. And Samantha's like, I don't have any experience in that. I think I should leave. And she gets up, and then he quickly gets up, and like the chair squeaks, and he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I just want to explain, because we really need somebody for tonight. Like, you're just like my only hope. We need somebody to stay here. You don't really even have to do anything. And he's like, nobody responds to like nurse or in-home care. He's like, so I thought if I put babysitting, that would be like the next best thing. So you're kind of like, okay, if this is legit, like in a real situation, forget anything about the movie, you'd be like, okay, like I can see that. Like, somebody doesn't respond. You just need somebody to take care of your elderly mother while you go out for the night to some party or wherever you're going. They have this very interesting conversation. I'm assuming it's based on Satanic Panic, that something must have happened with a babysitter, or it's like a reference to like slasher movies like Halloween, which is about like the babysitter protecting these kids that she's babysitting against Michael Myers.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like a reference to all of that. But I'll play it for you because it's a very...
Or like the movie Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Did you ever see that?
No. Isn't that a comedy though? Comedy though? Okay.
I mean, I figure it's all this horror stories that you read in the paper and see on TV that have scared away girls of your age from these types of opportunities. And
Yeah, there's a lot of weirdos out there.
You're right. You're right.
And that's the conversation they have. What is it going to take for you to stay here and watch my wife's mother?
Name your price.
He's like, 200, and then he takes out his his wallet and he pulls out $200. And it's great because they get like an old $100 bill. It's not like the super like huge image of Ben Franklin. Like they actually take the time to like get like bills that look real. And he's like, 200, 300,
wow,
400. And she's like, okay, 400. I'll do it for $400.
I am wondering like how she thinks she's going to pay next month's rent if she has no money for this month's rent.
That's true. Well, I guess she thinks if I do this babysitting job, I'll get more.
Maybe.
You gotta start somewhere. Word of mouth. It's the 80s.
I guess.
Earlier in the scene when they're at the pizza place, Megan was like, "Oh, you can go to like the job center where they'll help you get a job." And Samantha's like, "No, I need fucking money right now." Like,
and I guess if you move out of the dorm, you get the money back that you were spending on the dorm.
That's true. Yeah. So they agreed to $400. Samantha's telling Megan, she's like, "It's $400 for 4 hours. Like, I can't pass this up. That's like this month's rent plus like half of next month's rent. Like, I can't turn this down." And Megan's like acting really weird. She's like on the verge of tears, and she's like, "It's so stupid. I'm really mad at you. This is weird. We have to leave." And because I guess like from her perspective, she's like, why would anybody pay anyone $400 for 4 hours of work watching their mother? This is like really suspicious. And Samantha's like, "You're really overreacting." She's like, "Just go home, come back in 4 hours and pick me up. And that'll be that. Just like, don't worry. I'm going to be fine. I'll call you if anything happens." Megan's like, "Fine." And she gets in the car and she's like really frustrated because she's really upset and obviously concerned for her friend. And she pulls over to light a cigarette. And of course, she stops right inside the cemetery. She pulls the car and enters the cemetery and parks. She doesn't have any matches or a lighter with her, so she presses the cigarette lighter in the car to warm it up. She rolls down her window. She's just kind of like waiting with like the cigarette in her mouth, and all of a sudden a guy just walks up to the window.
I'm very
scared. She's like, "Holy shit, where did you come from?" Very young, just like this big beard, and he's wearing like a beanie, and he's wearing like a big kind of overcoat, and he's like, he says something to the effect of like, "Are you okay? Like, I saw you pull over, you know." And she's like, no, I'm fine. He's like, "Oh, it looks like you could use a light." She's like, "Oh, thanks." So she pulls out a lighter and she takes it and she lights the cigarette and she gives it back. And he's like, "Man, it's freezing out here." And she's like, "Yeah." almost like he wanted to like get in the car. He's like looking for a good time, get in the car. And she's just like not having any of it. And then he looks at her like he's just like doesn't understand. Like he does a good job like in his face, like being like, what's going on? He goes, "Are you not the babysitter?" And she's like, "No." And he pulls out a gun and blows her face off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The way it's shot is crazy. You see it's from the inside of the driver's seat, looking out the window, and you see the gun come in, and then it's like from the back seat, and you just see like her whole face literally blow off, and blood just like splashes across the front of the windshield.
I did not see that coming.
Right. It's awesome because you're like, wait a second, where did this come from all of a sudden? Who is this guy, and why is her friend dead now? Face is blown off, and the car. She hadn't put the car in park, so she was pressing on the brake, so her foot like leaves the brake and the car starts to roll forward, and the bearded guy gets in the car, puts it in park. He kind of has this look on his face like, uh-oh, I hope the real babysitter is there, but he obviously doesn't say that, but his face really shows in that when he's smoking the bloody cigarette. So Mr. Ullman gives Samantha $200, which is half, up front before he's ready to leave, and then he's like, oh, and here's $20 for pizza.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
And so you're like, everything's coming up Millhouse. This is great.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's a number for pizza on the fridge.
Give me pizza!
You know, I'm really glad that you're here because my wife is kind of the paranoid type. He says his wife's mother is very able-bodied. Samantha wouldn't have to do a lot of work. It's going to be a very easy night. And he says, I'm going to go upstairs, just finish getting ready. I'm going to go get my wife and just tell her to come down because we have to leave. So he goes upstairs.
She still hasn't seen the grandma.
No, not yet. He goes upstairs. Samantha goes back into the house and she hears this noise and she looks like through the house and she sees a door open and this woman in this black fur coat comes in. Oh, hi, I'm Vivian Ullman. I'm Mr. Ullman's wife. Mm-hmm. And Samantha's like, oh, I thought you were upstairs. And she's like, no, all my fur coats are in the basement. I had to go down there to select one for tonight. And she's like, well, you're a real godsend. You know, we were really looking for someone. And then she comments very awkwardly about how she loves the heat. She's like, we're from the desert. We really love the heat.
Okay.
Then she says, you're too young to Samantha. The boys must really like you. Your mother must worry a lot. And she keeps commenting on like how pretty she is. Then Mr. Ullman comes downstairs and they're getting ready. He says, what do you think of the girl? And Mrs. Ullman's like, oh, she's very pretty. I couldn't be more pleased. And Mr. Ullman's like, and you doubted me. Mrs. Ullman's like, my mother's very private. So, you shouldn't have any problems. And as they're leaving, Mr. Ullman's like, don't forget, there's the pizza number on the refrigerator. So this is not like the second time he's mentioned, I guess the third time that he's mentioned pizza. Mm-hmm. Here's $20 for pizza. Pizza number's on the fridge. Don't forget, pizza on the fridge. And then he closes the door. And it's like, you're like, okay, I get it. There's number for pizza. We're teens. We like pizza. Pizza. So Samantha calls Megan and gets the answering machine. And she's like, oh, I guess you're not home yet. I hope that you're not mad at me anymore. Just, call me back when you get home. Just like meandering around the house. And then she's like, oh, yeah, the pizza.
No pizza for you, Joey.
Calls the number for the pizza place. And this guy answers and he goes,
Pizza, what you eating?
And she finds this very funny and very disarming because at this point she's not creeped out, but she's just uneasy.
Yeah, as anyone would be.
Right. So she's struggling between the money is good, but the place is creepy. How do I reconcile those two? She orders a pizza and it's only $8. And I was like, oh my God, $8 for pizza.
Well, when you said $20 for pizza, I was like, that's too much for 1980s pizza.
We'll make it this pizza.
Right. So
way too much.
When I explain the rest of the movie, you'll know why he gave her $20.
Okay.
After ordering the pizza, she's got to wait because it's going to be about 30 minutes for the pizza to get there. So she's walking around the house and she finds a billiard room and all the rooms in the house, all the lights are off except in like this parlor and the kitchen. So she turns on the light and she finds the billiard room and she's like, that's not interesting. And there's a harpsichord in the foyer. So she starts to play Heart and Soul on it. Just the first few little, plinks. And that's when the soundtrack starts to become very much just piano keys going doo-doo.
I hate this.
And then she's walking around and it's doo-doo. It's very, very sparse. It's not ramping up yet.
Creepy.
She goes to the second floor and she goes into Mr. Ullman's office and she's like rummaging around his desk drawers and she finds like these big Coke bottle glasses and she like puts them on. And then she's like, I'm bored. She takes them off and she leaves the room.
This is what every babysitter does, just so you know. I know you don't babysit or ever have, but this is very typical babysitter behavior.
Absolutely. It's like if I were doing that, the first thing I would do is like, okay, what secrets do you have in here? What's in your fridge? What's in your closet?
Totally.
Like, so this is the part that in the non-director's cut that was cut out, was the exploration of the house. Now, I don't know if you remember in American Werewolf in London, but there's a scene where he's really bored in the nurse's apartment. Yes. And they're playing Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater Revival. And then at the end of the scene, he turns into the werewolf. But it's like 3 minutes of him just like trying to watch TV, trying to read, going outside. It's kind of the same effect. It really disarms the horror before you see it because the transformation scene in American Werewolf in London is so like hideous that the lead up to it is not like you're like waiting for it, and then you're like, okay, there's not going to happen. And then it happens. So this movie sort of takes that same route. So like we're following her and the sequence is, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes long of her like going to the office, playing the harpsichord. She goes upstairs and she finds a kid's bedroom and it's empty. And she's kind of like, they had a grown up son. Like, why is this room kind of like still messy and like still like lived in? And she finds like a goldfish and she like taps the glass and she finds like an old bathroom. She goes downstairs and she starts to do homework. She gets bored of that and she just ends up eating a bar of chocolate instead.
Sure.
And then she hears a noise outside. She goes to the window and she's like looking around, but it's completely empty. There's nobody there. She turns on a TV and it's the news, Channel 13 News, which I thought was very cute.
Yeah.
The anchors are talking about the total lunar eclipse. It's going to last as long as 2 hours, the eclipse. They do an awesome job with the news. The newscasters themselves, the graphics that they use, the filter that they use, the way they filmed it, it's like absolutely perfect. It really looks like an old 1980s newscast. Because like when you see movies today and they're trying to like recreate like CNN, you're like, oh, this looks so bad. This is not the way that they would film it.
Right.
But they really do a good job making it look like local news.
The name of my company is Video Production News, a professional news gathering service.
The way they speak and just the hair and just everything about it is just really excellent. And that's like another great like point to the movie and making you really believe this is a movie from the 80s. And they do this great thing where the newscast ends with the lunar eclipse story. And then there's going to be a movie. They're going to show a movie just like they did in the 80s, like where, you know, the TV stations would just show movies until 3 a.m. and then the channel will go blank until, you know, the morning. And I pulled a clip from it because like the little back and forth of the dialogue is really great, the little banter.
And that's it for us tonight. Stay tuned for a special presentation of Frightmare Theater coming up next.
Ooh, scary.
Good night for a movie.
Get the popcorn ready.
I like mine with butter.
So Samantha listens to her Walkman, and there's this extended sort of dance sequence where she plays the music really loud and she starts to play pool.
Like a risky business situation.
She's dancing through the kitchen. The music stops and she opens up this door and sound is coming only through her headphones. So it sounds like really far away and just like low. And she pulls a chain light bulb. And you realize like it's a basement and she's like, nope. She just closes the door and then the music gets loud again and she's dancing upstairs and she's very careless and she knocks over a vase.
Whoops.
And it breaks. So she runs downstairs and she grabs a dustpan. Whoops. She comes back up. She's cleaning it up and she hits this door that's near where this kind of end table was. And the door kind of rattles because it's like partially open. And she opens it and inside are a bunch of fur coats. And she's like, Mrs. Ullman. Exactly. Mrs. Ullman said that they were in the basement. Beneath the fur coats are a bunch of old photos, and she finds the photos of a family standing in front of the Volvo that are not the Ullmans.
Okay.
And it's a man and a woman and a young boy. So she goes outside and she tries to kind of like find some clues as to what's going on. And she sees like a yellow and green van sitting outside, and the camera goes underneath the car and you see a cigarette fall, and then like this guy stamps it out, and it's like the bearded guy. You don't see his face, but you can tell by his clothes and his shoes that it's him. Samantha goes back inside and she's kind of freaking out now because of the photo and the whole fur thing. So she calls Megan again and she gets her answering machine, and she has this answering machine where she's like, hello? Nah, I just fooled you. I'm not actually home. Leave a message after the beep.
That's also super 80s thing to do.
Right? Samantha grabs a knife from the knife block and she goes to the bathroom with the knife, and she looks in the mirror and she's like, get a grip. Like, everything's fine. You're just freaked out. It's a really old house, far away from your dorm. You're getting $400. They already gave you half up front. Everything's going to be fine.
Where's the pizza guy, by the way?
Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
30 minutes. So she hasn't waited 30 minutes yet.
I'm getting scared right now.
Okay. In a very kind of awkward scene, she closes the door to the bathroom, and then you hear her pants unzip, and you hear her sit down, and then you hear her pee.
Look, that guy's pissed his trousers.
And then she hears a banging noise coming from upstairs, and she opens the door, and she's like sitting on the toilet. You can relate to like being on the toilet and hearing something and like wanting to open the door. Yeah. You know, like you can't just like get up like mid pee.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also like a nice little touch. So she finishes up and she goes upstairs to investigate. And they do this great thing where it's unrealistic in terms of how light actually works, but they shine the light through the banister. So there's like, it's almost like teeth. Okay. Like the banister, like vertical bars.
Yeah.
And so she's walking up and it looks like, you know, she's walking through these teeth. Uh-huh. It's very cool. Is everything all right in there? Into the room that she believes to be the grandmother's.
Right.
And she doesn't get a response. And then it cuts and we're inside the room and we see the light from the hallway, like at the bottom of the door sill. And the camera starts to pan to the right. And all of a sudden you see these bloody symbols on the ground. And it's a pentagram. God. And in the middle of the pentagram is the young boy who lives in the house, and his heart and his eyes have been removed.
Stop.
And his parents are laying next to him dead, and they're all bloody. But the door is locked and she can't get in. So she's like, is everything all right? And then, so she can't get in. So she just assumes that everything is all right.
That is so creepy and seems so random, like out of the blue.
She hears banging coming from somewhere else. So she goes up to this door that she hadn't been through before, and she opens it, and there's a staircase up to the attic. Again, the attic.
Never go in the attic.
Into the attic with the meats.
Never. Okay, all the scary movies that we've seen lately involve somebody going to the attic, and it's always bad news.
Right, and we talked about it. Like, attics and basements are naturally a scary place to be because they're pretty much the only places in your house, that can remain dark.
Yeah, and they're like forgotten, and no living happens there.
Right.
So the attic and the basement to me represent the sort of like vestigial part of the house where it exists, but it's not really a part of the main organism of the house.
Right. It does. You don't need it for it to function. It simply acts as a place to put stuff, to put old stuff that you don't need.
Right.
She goes up the staircase that leads to the attic. She gets up like the first 3 steps, and then the doorbell rings, and it's like this, and it's a jump scare. Like, there's no question about it. Like, she runs downstairs, she opens up the door, she throws the money at the guy, she takes the pizza, and she slams the door, and then, like, she sits down with her back to the door, and she's, like, clutching the pizza. P-I-C-C-A. The guy's like, okay, have a good night. And she's like, thanks. And then the camera booms up, and you see that the pizza delivery guy is the bearded guy.
I knew it would be.
That shot Megan.
Right. Is the pizza even hot?
They don't say if it's hot, but she does eat the pizza later.
Pizza time.
So there's real pizza inside.
Okay.
There's just like a pineapple in there for some reason.
They're
He's
like,
trying to trick her.
She probably won't even open this. Who cares? It's like a cardboard pizza.
It's like the play school pizza. Beardy walks around the house, and he's
I think maybe a more apt nickname would be Murdery.
Murdery.
Murder dude.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
There's another guy with a beard. That's what I'm saying. So this guy's like,
well, like
murder hacky sack guy.
The old man though, his beard isn't as significant as this kid's.
Okay.
So Beardy goes around the house and he's like looking through the windows, like trying to look at her, and then he kind of like skulks off. Samantha calls the number that Mr. Ullman had given her earlier, saying like, "Hey, we're gonna be at this number if you need anything." So she calls the number, and the number's been disconnected. She calls 911, and then she hangs up because she's like, no, this is stupid. I don't need to call 911.
But 911 calls you back if you do that.
So they call her back. I didn't know this at first, but it's Lena Dunham who plays the emergency 911.
That's so random.
And you can't tell it's her. She puts on this weird accent that I was like, I didn't even know that was her. So she's like, we have to leave this line open for emergencies. So if there's no emergency, just like, please be careful next time. And Samantha's like, sorry, I didn't mean to call. Everything's going to be okay. She washes the knife off, and she opens up the pizza and she cuts the pizza with the knife. And like the pizza's like sort of already cut. They do this great shot of the exterior of the home, and the light goes on in like the parlor, like on the far right of the house. And then like the room next to it, and then the foyer, and then the room next to it. So she's like turning on all the lights, so she's not freaked out. She sits down and she starts to eat the pizza, and she turns the TV on. And if you remember, after the news was Frightmare Theater,
right?
And the movie they're playing is Night of the Living Dead, which, fun fact, has no copyright on it, so anybody can take the movie and sell it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the George A. Romero, who's the director, lapsed on the copyright. He didn't file it in time, so it's now in the public domain.
What a doinker.
So that's like a great little fact that, you know, like any movie can show that other movie in it.
It's actually our next podcast is just listening to Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, we're going to replace all of the sound effects with sound effects that we make with our mouth.
That'd be awesome.
So like he gets in the car and he's like brum, 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 brum.
And like somebody's scaring them. They're like, ooh.
No, but leave all the dialogue in. It's just the sound effects.
Okay.
So like when they open the door, we'll go like
and like when they walk, we'll be like,
there's always a horse in the scene.
Cluck, 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 cluck.
And there'll be a dog huffing and puffing in the background.
Yeah, like ours.
Samantha gets freaked out by it because like the movie's just like at that part, just like screaming and just like zombies eating each other, eating these people. So she turns off the TV and she's like kind of disgusted by the pizza. So she goes into the kitchen and she runs the sink and she gets herself a glass of water and she's like, she's got like this taste in her mouth that she just, for some reason, she can't get rid of. And she hears these noises coming from the sink, like pipes banging below the kitchen, like going into the basement. So she goes upstairs and she thinks that maybe the water was like running from above because like the faucet is off. So like there'd be no water running underneath. So she thinks maybe it's coming from like another part of the house. She goes upstairs into the bathroom that she had uncovered earlier. She had just like come in, turn on the light. She's like, oh, a bathroom. And then she leaves. So she opens up the door and she hears like a dripping noise and she looks in the shower and there's like all these clumps of hair in the shower.
Oh, gross.
Like this black hair.
This movie sounds really scary, like way scarier than Suspiria.
I think that this movie to you would be way scary.
A lot of the touch points are really familiar to me.
So obviously somebody who has babysat before.
And has had... babysitting is kind of a little scary in the same way that dating is scary, like I said. So you go to this place, like, basically sight unseen. You have no idea who the heck's kid you're watching. You don't know what the house is about. You don't know like what's lurking in drawers and cabinets and attics. You have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary. You place a lot of faith in the person that hired you. Aside from the fact that they're placing a lot of faith in you to like not burn their house down and also keep their kids alive, that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
But it's sort of it reminds me of this Little Red Riding Hood thing of like a young woman is set off into the world to like trust the powers that be to like take care of her, and there are dangers that lurk in the unknown, and basically everything is unknown.
Right. And like there's sort of no crash course to prepare. You're not given that set of instructions to prepare for that. If someone had told her, hey, maybe if it's like a creepy house and there's some noises, like just get out of there, or you know, like do call 911 and do have them come, you know, it's like the dangers of not setting up the next generation to be successful.
And sort of the 911 operator really chastising her is like, sucks.
Well, and it makes you, if you're in that situation, you don't want to call again.
Of course.
Like, what if you get that same person? And, you know, it's like Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Right.
Kind of syndrome.
Right.
After seeing the hair and sort of being freaked out, she hears more noises coming from the attic.
There are noises coming from every room in this house.
I know. So she's like, well, I got to investigate the attic.
It's like whack-a-mole.
Or the more popular version, my version, guacamole.
Guacamole.
Where you hit little avocados with really cute faces.
Guacamole.
And when you hit them, they go...
Joey, that's an amazing game.
Don't steal it. Trademark. Patent pending. Of course, she has to go up the stairs. There is a light bulb with a string on it near the door to the attic.
By far the creepiest kind of light that you could have.
Right. It reminds me a lot of the staircase of the attic of Beetlejuice, where they have like the door that there is constantly like being locked and unlocked by the ghosts and like the people. So she goes to pull the string on the light and the light bulb turns on for a split second and then all the lights in the house go on. She's like frozen. Like she doesn't know what to do. And she hears footsteps approaching the door to the attic.
I'm so scared.
There's like this weird rolling sound, almost like somebody's like rolling a chair, and it's like, and it stops like right in front of the door. And Samantha like slowly gets up and slowly starts to move down the stairs, and the attic door opens and you see these fingers like curl out.
I'm so scared.
So she runs down the stairs, and all of a sudden she becomes like really, really lightheaded because you realize that the pizza was spiked.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that.
And she stumbles and she passes out.
I was going to ask if there was something wrong with the pizza.
Mm-hmm. Well, for $8.
Who make it this pizza?
That's like 99-cent pizza in New York. You can't
also,
trust
like,
99-cent pizza.
What would be the reason of them directing her to this like hitman guy?
Right.
Give her some specific kind of pizza.
Right. And the guy was like, don't forget to pick the pizza.
Yeah.
He's like, pizza, 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 pizza. And she's like, why are you saying that? And he's like, no reason. Pizza.
No reason, just pizza. No reason, just pizza.
Pizza day out there, huh?
Hey, how's it pizza today?
Nice pizzaing you. Pizza. All right, take a pizza.
All right, pizza. Eat it fresh. What was the slogan again? Come and eat it.
Pizza, what you eating? So it's like a play on Little Caesars.
Yeah, for a fake pizza business, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that I specifically pulled that clip because I think it's very, hey man, pizza, what you eating? Can I talk to your manager?
Pizza?
We've been talking about pizza a lot because that documentary we watched about the pizza guy.
Oh my God, we need to get back to that. I can't wait to watch the rest of that tonight. Sorry to derail this.
No, that's okay.
Again.
We'll probably cut all this out anyway.
Yeah.
We'll save a little bit of it.
That's
I think the pizza part was pretty good, but that's just pizza. After she passes out, the movie just cuts to black, and it does this thing where it pulses. The imagery pulses at like a heartbeat, so it's like.
Oh my God, that's really scary. You know how I feel about that.
Yes, I know.
It's very scary.
It makes the first time I saw it, I was like, do I have like a regular heartbeat? What's going on? Why is this influencing me so much?
It's a psychosomatic thing that makes you feel ill. Makes
Right.
you feel like you're going to pass out.
And they use it perfectly because the first image that you see that's pulse is a blood red moon.
Right.
Cool. And then it keeps pulsing, and it's a close-up of a candle flame. It's Samantha's face, and she's got a white cloth gagging her, like going across her mouth.
Oh my God.
And it zooms out, and she's in the basement in a ceremonial circle, tied up, wearing a white gown with candles burning everywhere, and there's like symbols all over the place on the ground, and she's tied up in a pentagram. Then Mr. Ullman appears in a black robe, very slowly from around the corner, coming from the shadow, and he's wearing like a black robe, and all I see is like his face. And then his wife comes up behind him, and then the bearded guy comes up. Turns out that's their son.
Right.
Because he said, my child, but he's grown up. I believe his name is Vincent, but I don't think that's ever said in the movie. I think just his title, he's credited as that in the credits. But I like calling him Beardy. It's so much better.
Yeah, agreed.
So the bearded guy comes up to her and like starts like rubbing her head, like trying to calm her down. And of course the music is like, oh, it's like very scary and just like
supposed to be like a sacrificial version.
Yeah. So okay. So we'll get to that in just a second. But hold on to that thought. Out of the shadows, this decrepit old woman walks forward, the grandmother. But her face is like almost like the skin of her forehead fused with her nose, so it's like sort of flat, and she has like these sunken black eyes and just like veins like running through her face, and just like this old hair, dingy gray greasy hair.
Yikes. And
she runs her hands over Samantha's body, and she pulls up the nightgown up to her belly, and she draws a pentagram in blood across her belly button.
Whose blood?
At this point, you don't know.
Is it Samantha's blood?
No, it's not her blood.
Usually the blood gets off at the second floor.
But we'll get to more blood in a second. The more blood.
Can't wait.
So she draws a pentagram in blood over her belly button. She places a goat skull that is hollowed out into so that the top of the skull is like a cup. And the old woman takes a dagger and stabs her own wrist and pours the blood into the goat's head.
I mean, that's like a normal thing that you do, though.
Well, especially in satanic rituals,
when
that's
you have
like
a goat's head that's hollowed out with a cup in the skull.
Which guy in town did that for him? Like, we have this goat skull. We want to turn it into a cup, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll have it to you by next Tuesday."
It's a DIY.
You think?
Yeah.
You don't think they went down to like Mitch's skullduggery?
Yeah.
And then he did it for them. But he's like, Mr. Ullman, I've done so much work for you. You're like my favorite customer. So of course I'll dig this skull out for you.
On the front of the store, it's called like Mitch's Pizzeria. And then like they flip a button, press a button, and it flips around. And it's like skullduggery.
Yeah, he's like, I got a job for you. And he's like, hold on. He's like, sorry, folks, we got to close for the evening. there's some malfunctioning going on with our pizza oven. And so he ushers everybody out, and then he pushes the button, and like all the skulls come out. It's like,
yeah. So he does all the skullduggery, and then he's like, "Oh, also, can I get one of those poison pizzas?"
Yeah. He's like, "I need a poison pizza for my son, Beardy." And he's like, "Oh, I love Beardy. Wears a red beanie.
He knows how to play Wonderwall. That's it."
Yeah. Every beer that he ever drank is on a shelf above his bed.
Totally. We've got this guy's covered for sure.
She fills the goat skull. I guess a goblet would be a better description of it.
Goblet.
The goat goblet.
Okay.
The greatest of all time goblet. Then she takes a little bit of the blood and draws some symbols on Samantha's forehead. She tips the goblet, and the front of the snout starts to drip the blood, and she makes Samantha drink it.
Okay, normal.
In sort of Samantha's resistance, she knocks the old woman aside. Like, she hits her in the face and she knocks her aside, and the rope rips from one of her arms, and she's able to like free her other arm and her legs, and she gets up and she grabs like the dagger that the old woman had used to slit the wrist, and she stabs Mr. Ullman in the gut, and she runs out of the basement.
Good for you, girl.
Oh no, I'm sorry. She doesn't run out of the basement just yet. She runs to like a weird corner of the basement, and Beardy confronts her and grabs her, and she shoves her thumb into his eye. And it's like a close-up of his eye, and her thumb goes like through his eye, and like blood shoots out.
Right.
So like she incapacitates him, and she runs upstairs, and then all of a sudden she slips in this like huge puddle of blood, and she falls down.
Blood in, blood out.
And her face like lands almost directly in front of Megan's scooped out, blown out face.
Oh my God.
From earlier. So they brought the body to the house, and it's just, there's like blood everywhere. After slipping in the blood, she gets up and she grabs the knife that she had taken earlier that she had used to cut the pizza, and she runs upstairs. Beardy comes out of the basement. He like tries to go after her, but he misses her, and she runs up the stairs. But because he knows the house so well, he turns around and he goes up like a different staircase. So you're like, oh no, he's gonna like obviously like meet her upstairs. Like there's no way that she can like outrun him because he knows the house so well. And of course he does. He meets her in the hallway, and he uses the gun that he used to kill Megan with, and he shoots her in the shoulder. And she like falls to the ground, and she's like screaming, and the way that she like writhes on the floor like really looks like she got shot. She did a very good job. And of course she's covered in blood, and like her hair's like all stringy, and like she's doing just a great job of like just being absolutely terrified. And he goes down to sort of scoop her up, and she grabs the knife and she stabs him in the throat. She like cuts his throat, and he falls like in the hallway, and he's just sitting there, and he's just going like, and it's just like blood is just like gushing out.
Creepy.
And then he dies. At the same time that's happening, Mrs. Ullman is coming up the stairs, and she sees her son's dead body. Samantha like zooms past her and goes up into the attic. And
don't go into the attic ever.
And when she does, she starts to have visions. And they do this again, like the pulsing heartbeat.
Oh my God.
And it's images of her, all bloody, combined with the old woman. And they start to like merge.
Oh yeah, I see what's going on here.
And it's like so chilling, because it's like the old woman is making these horrible faces, and then she's just like spitting blood. And it's just like, because it's pulsing, you never know when it's coming. And it's always accompanied by like a little bit of a sound effect. So it keeps happening, and she kind of keeps getting lightheaded, and she's like freaking out. She looks down at her stomach, and her belly is crawling with black veins.
Oh my God. You knew I would hate that part.
Yes, I know. So she falls to the floor, and she's like completely out of it. She's just being plagued by these visions. Her belly's all black veiny. Her clothing is all bloody. Mrs. Ullman comes up, and she's like, you can't stop it. It'll work in spite of you. There's nothing you can do. So she walks to this window on the other side of the attic, and it like faces the moon as the eclipse is happening. And she says, talk to me, Lord. And she takes her hair and she pulls it off.
Gross.
And it's like wispy. She's like bald with like wispy white hair, just like her husband.
Gross.
And she's like all like, she looks really gross.
So whose hair was that in the sink, in the tub?
Oh, I don't know. I'm assuming, I bet, because the scene where it's revealed that the family that lives in the house is dead, you can't really see the mom's head, but I'm thinking maybe she scalped the lady's hair and then cut it in the tub.
Ew, sick.
To wear it. I don't know. It's never explained, but I'm assuming.
That's gross, man.
Yeah. So she's talking to like the moon, and
Where'd you get that hair? Oh, I just scalped it.
Oh, it was a steal.
It was a wig.
It was a wig. I was wearing my wig. I was talking to the devil. We're wearing my wig.
oh, this hair, this actually, it once belonged to a different woman. That's where I got it from.
So as Mrs. Ullman is talking to the moon, basically, Samantha gets up and stabs her through the back with the knife. And then Miss Ullman dies. The stabbing is in a weird place. It's like, she just like stabs her like in the center of the back and then she just dies like immediately and she like vomits all this blood. She goes downstairs and she tries to call 911. Line has been disconnected. So she runs outside and she's still seeing these flashing visions of like the old woman and her like sort of merging. And she like throws up because she's like getting so sick. And she runs from the house. And Mr. Ullman is there, and he pulls the dagger out of his belly, like after she stabbed it in him. In his
she got a second dagger.
The one that the old woman used to slip her wrist to pour into the into the goblet. Mr. Ullman, in his very like calm demeanor, is like, "Please wait, don't go." And so she runs, and of course the cemetery is like right next door. So she runs into the cemetery. Oh, I'm sorry. Backtrack. She, on her way out the house, she picks up the revolver from Beardy's dead body.
Sure.
She's in the cemetery. She's running and she like trips and she falls down. And Mr. Ullman's like, "It's your destiny. Listen to the voices calling for you." And then she starts to hear these like little kid voices calling her name. And like this kind of like, Samantha, 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 Samantha. It's like all these different like kind of volumes. He's like, "It's your destiny to accept him." And he's like, "You can kill me, but I'm just the messenger. We're only moments away. You just have to just wait." She looks up and the eclipse is like happening in this moment. And she just takes the gun and she shoots herself in the head.
Oh my God.
The next day, the news is on. And the reporter, the newscaster is like, "Scientists can't explain why the moon so quickly disappeared from its eclipse last night. Scientifically, this is impossible. Like as soon as she shot herself in the head, the earth like rotated so fast that the moon just like went away." You're thinking that, okay, she solved the problem, that she killed herself and she broke the cycle, and whatever happened to her, whatever this family wanted to do is not going to be, has been undone. Mm-hmm. So they're like, this and more coming up. So like, you're like, okay, this is like a little news brief and it's in the great style that they did earlier in the movie. Then we're in a hospital and like, camera is slowly dollying down the hallway and like nurses are coming in and out, and it peeks into this room and you see Samantha and her head is bandaged.
No.
And this woman comes in and she sets down a tray and then she pulls out a needle and she fills it with something and sticks it into her IV, and she kind of like smooths her hair and like kind of makes sure the bed is like nice and neat, and she says, "You're gonna be just fine, both of you." And then she leaves the room, and it ends on a freeze frame of her sleeping in the bed, and then the credits roll. So she has Satan's baby inside of her.
Wait, she's pregnant?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
The black veins on her belly were like her being impregnated.
I thought that you were going to say that she has combined souls with the old lady somehow.
No.
How'd she get pregnant?
Well, it's just all in the ceremony.
Okay. So what tipped me off to this... it's like obviously a very common trope for there to be a virgin sacrifice. Mm-hmm. But I started thinking that was going to happen from the moment that you said that there was a sock on the door and that her other roommate was like doing it.
Right.
And she was so set apart from that and like so uncomfortable.
Right. She's supposed to be very plain, not prudish, but just like plain. But you're right. There's no indication that she's a virgin, but just by these clues that you think that she's unlucky in sort of like her love life. Mm-hmm. That's like what they're sort of leading to.
Okay. Yeah. I did not see that coming, her being impregnated with the devil. That makes no sense to me. I just think that when you said both of you, I thought it meant somebody else's soul is like cohabitating with her body.
Right.
In her body.
But no, the shot of the belly is like the revealing.
Sick. So she shot herself in the head. And then they were like, "Oh, we could just patch that right up."
Yeah. Or
maybe she's brain dead and she's still growing the baby.
Yeah, either that or I thought that, if she is, that she sort of has some sort of satanic power that just killing herself wouldn't work like that. Just because she has that power in her. Like she was incapable of killing herself.
I would think that the next story on the news would be like, "Girl found without a face."
Right.
In local cemetery.
On the lighter side of the news, a faceless body was found.
That's intense. And the other thing that I wanted to comment on, but I forgot to in the moment, was when you said that the satanic mom took her hair off. And it was just like wispy hairs. And I thought of, the witches.
Yes. It's exactly like that.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah. the Ullmans were both sort of old and decrepit, not clinging to youth, but they sought youth. Sort of like the way that the witches in Suspiria sort of use the young women to sacrifice the young women so that they can remain alive and sort of young and beautiful. Not that they're young and beautiful in the movie, but like just vivacious, or like they have, so they can live forever.
Yeah.
Sort of that trope that, of course, it would be this old couple. They've promised Satan this vessel in exchange for maybe youth or wealth.
And what's the deal with their son, though? And also, I understand that they murdered the people that lived in the house because they needed the house.
Right.
Okay, so they murdered them, but they did a satanic ritual when they murdered them.
Yes.
So why was that?
It could be to bring about the old woman, that's not really like that woman's mother, that like maybe that's like the only one who can do the ceremony to put the baby in her body.
I just have a lot of questions still.
It doesn't answer them.
Yeah.
I mean, we can speculate all you want. Like, there's like not too many crazy theories that you could throw over this that wouldn't be, correct. Like, you could say that the reason that they killed the family and did the satanic ritual was to have it be a fertile ground in which to perform another one, this particular ceremony.
Yeah.
They had to cleanse the house of good spirits.
Yeah.
To make it evil.
I wonder if the beard guy also had fake hair. Is that why he was wearing a beanie?
Oh, maybe. That's possible.
All comes back to the beanie, baby.
Yeah. Oh.
See what I did there?
No, I missed it. We'll come back around later.
No, you got it.
No, I did. The question now is, do you want to watch The House of the Devil?
I am more scared of this than I am of Suspiria. Do I want to see it? It's going to need to be daylight.
Okay.
These are my stipulations.
Okay.
I will try to see it.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to see the whole thing because this really does sound very scary to me.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my terms and conditions. It needs to be daylight. There definitely needs to be pizza.
Right. Yes, I think that the special food item for when we watch this is definitely pepperoni pizza.
Okay, great. Sounds perfect.
Okay,
so it'll be daylight and there will be pizza, and I cannot guarantee that I will not need the light on when we go to sleep.
Okay.
I might need that. Also, when we're watching it, I'd like to request that you point out the different technical things as they're happening so that I can appreciate that and more than being distracted and scared by the movie.
Okay.
I didn't forget about that pizza for 1 second. I was thinking about it the whole time.
Sacrificial virgin.
Pizza. Do you think that the nurse was part of the cult too?
It's possible, yeah.
You don't have any definitive answers for me?
No, well, there's no definitive answers in the movie.
I'm very scared. I will try to watch this though.
Okay. From my description, what are the little signals that you're getting that make you want to watch it? Like, at what point in the description did you say, okay, I think I'm willing to watch this movie?
Okay, actually the opposite. I'm just doing this because I want to know about it because you think it's cool. Because normally, based on this description, I would not watch this movie. This is way too scary for me. And I guess that's maybe the little bit that's piquing my curiosity is that I identify strongly with the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big time babysitter. Babysat quite a lot in my time. Feel very already like this movie is happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part that's really scary to me. It feels very personal. But left to my own devices, I would probably not watch this movie. Whereas Suspiria, maybe I would have watched it as an art film.
Right. Because it does function a little bit in that way. Yeah. As an art film. It's very much, you're like, yeah, an arty kid made this.
Yeah. Totally. Well, there was so much about it visually and it was so kind of boring to me in the middle that it was like, all right, we get it. It's a horror movie, but it's true. This is shot very interestingly.
Mm-hmm.
This movie that we're talking about, what's it called? The Devil House?
The House of the Devil?
The House of the Devil. Just sounds like something that I would be very scared of and would probably have nightmares from. So good luck to you as the person that sleeps in the same bed as me.
Well, based on the description, do you find it scary because you identify so much with the character, or is it the fact of the satanic undercurrents, like the creepiness of drinking the blood, and that she has the the ceremony? Okay,
the part that scares me is this idea that everything that looks normal could be secretly lurking evil, and that's, we sort of talked about this, that's part of being a woman in the world too. I do feel like most horror films especially horror films with a female main character, like really function to talk about the terrifying things that can happen to a woman. This is sort of like I don't know. So you can't win, right? Like you're either too virginal and then you become a target for sacrifice, or you're too promiscuous and then you become a target for victimization in a different way.
Right, like in the Friday the 13th, the people who have sex get sloppy.
Yeah.
Because they're too
sexed up.
Yeah, they're too hormonal to notice the killer.
But this is like, a quote-unquote good girl.
Right.
She hasn't done anything wrong, but she's targeted because of her purity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of, to me, it talks about, like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Literally, in this movie.
Yeah.
That's terrifying to me as a woman, like, just thinking about it in more general terms, like, it is the same, it was the same feeling babysitting for a stranger as it was maybe going on a first date with a stranger. Like, you don't know these people, and experience has told you probably it's all going to be fine, probably nothing bad's going to happen, but there's the idea that something could go terribly wrong and you're all alone. You're alone babysitting and you're alone on the date. Often prostitutes are victimized.
Mm-hmm.
How often like women that are riding alone in cabs or Ubers are victimized. How often babysitters are like a common trope that like the babysitter gets killed. So these are all women that like have the audacity to like try to earn money or like save money, or just like be out in the world on their own, and they're separated from the flock in a certain way, and they're targeted and victimized in that way. That's scary.
Seeking her independence.
Yes.
And society was like, nope.
Hard pass. You're getting murdered.
Right.
You're getting devil murdered.
Enjoy the pizza. If you could recommend a wine for this movie, what kind of wine would it be?
Okay, I think we have to go with a big, full-bodied Italian wine, like blood red, maybe like a Nebbiolo or something a little bit heavier.
After you select a particular wine, then we will post it in the description for this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, and you can pick yourself up a dark blood red wine to enjoy while you watch The House of the Devil.
Pizza! And enjoy your pizza.
So everybody has a little bit of homework. If they're interested in watching this movie, they can watch it before we post our next episode next Tuesday. We are also going to watch it, and we'll do the same thing we did with Suspiria, and we'll hook up a couple of mics, and you'll get our reactions to the movie, and then we'll go over it, and then we will talk about a new movie, which I will not reveal now.
Because I'm going to look it up.
Exactly.
Hey, speaking of blood red, why don't we talk a little bit about your book?
Ah, yes, because the cover is a mighty fine blood red. That's a good segue.
That's right.
For my new horror novel called Below. And just like House of the Devil, it is about the deal with the devil that impacts these siblings in ways that they possibly could not imagine, and how their world and their minds and their perception is sort of turned upside down because of it. It's based, just like Suspiria, on the giallo subgenre, and it takes place in the late 1950s in Italy, and the book is designed to look very much like an old paperback. So if you like horror and you're interested in reading something new or participating sort of in this podcast through the book, you can pick it up on Kindle through Amazon, or you can go to my publishing website to get the paperback version at notyourplatypus.com. That's not your platypus as in the animal.com. You can also follow us on social media. We have all of our links and accounts in the description wherever you're listening to this podcast. How do we want to sign off? We got to come up with like a sign off.
Oh my God. I feel really unprepared.
Maybe we should just end it. Like, now.
Now.